Well, many of you out there are faced with the challenge of managing multiple management system standards. And that's really not a surprise, since it's increasingly a dictate for doing international business that organizations must be registered not only to ISO 9001 and ISO 14001, but a host of sector-specific standards as well.
Sure.
Makes some sense. The truth is that remaining in compliance with the requirements of these various standards is a challenge. I don't think anybody would debate that. For those seeking to derive the maximum value from their management systems, they first need to overcome the potential workflow bottlenecks generated from this very issue. And this sounds like something that you're facing, you and your company. Fear not, because we have just the man to help you out with some really good advice. He is the president of Omnex Systems, a well-respected auditor, auditing trainer, and a member of several ISO technical committees helping to develop management system standards. So, Chad Kymal, welcome back to Quality Digest Live.
Thank you, Mike. Hi, Mike and Dirk.
Hey, how are you doing?
Great.
Good, good.
Well, Chad, you have about as much experience as anyone, or probably more experience than most people, in standards development and implementation. In your opinion, is the proliferation of all these standards a net positive for users? I mean, some users might feel that, gosh, I'm being deluged. I turn left and I've got a standard. I turn right, I've got a standard. But are all these kind of a positive for them?
I'll say yes and no. The yes part is there are many standards which are really good, and not only do we, the organization, need to implement it, many times the customer should be asking the suppliers to implement it. And definitely, if we get a chance a little bit later, maybe we can talk about, would you like me to do that now? What might those standards be? The no part, is that in some cases, like social responsibility standards, I think they're excessive, and there's a proliferation of certain types of standards, like sustainability and social responsibility. But for the most part, good companies, here are the 5 standards we think good companies will implement. One is QMS. I'll say QMS because it's always so many flavors of QMSs. The second one is the EMS. Next is ISO 9001 and its derivatives like IATF, AS 9100, 13485. Then ISO 14001. Then we have ISO 45001, health and safety, which just came out, the rewrite of 18001. Then today, it is absolutely important companies implement IT security and cyber security, ISO 27001. And the last standard we believe everybody should implement, because companies globally have already dictated standards, is social responsibility. We don't have any specific standard for that other than using ISO 26000 as a guidance. I'll just say one more thing, Dirk, that very popular also has been recently an anti-bribery standard, ISO 37001. And these are all standards actually Omnex teaches and implements. And as soon as I say this, there are even more standards I think are important, like lab standards, 17025. But I will stop right here.
Well, it just goes on and on.
It does. Well, this is the issue we're talking about. Well, and Chad, you wrote an article that we published earlier this week on this topic, and we're doing a webinar next week on this topic as well. So, kind of boil it down for us. What are some of the tactics that people can employ to help manage this overload and kind of work their way through it and get value out of these standards?
Very simply, we only have one organization and one set of processes inside the organization. The standards, including regulatory standards, can be a plethora of them. As many as people want. At the end of the day, all of them will be implemented by the same, processes. Or you can even say process map if you want. So what we have to do in terms of integration, so there's 3 types of integration Omnex says you need to do for integrated management system. First, integrate the shalls. I just call them shells. So these are QMS shells, EMS shells, health and safety shells, integrated into the same business process. There are three things we can say. When we look at a shell, we'll say, yep, I already satisfied. Number two, I don't satisfy it, but I have a process. And then you fix the process. Third is, I don't have a process. So that's the way you think about, and you integrate that into your organization. I'll just tell you the two other things people need to, because I don't hear anybody talking about it, which is integrated risk. And the third is, of course, everybody thinks about integrated audits. After saying that, many things people want to do immediately when they call me is they want to do integrated audits. And then I have to stop them and say, look, you cannot do integrated audits unless you have an integrated management system. I hope that makes sense.
Well, and I would ask then, how do you know if your management systems, all of your management systems, are truly integrated?
So, in that download, I wrote an article for Quality Digest, and it includes a download, what I called a primer, executive primer. This is the biggest problem. When top management turns and asks their people, do we have an integrated management system? They always say yes. It also confuses me. When I ask them, they tell me yes. But then I know what questions to ask, which I've written down in the article for top management to ask. Question is, what do you have integrated? Do you have the manual integrated? By the way, that's not a big deal. Manual being integrated. In my book that I wrote about it, I say, look, a level 1 manual being integrated or not doesn't matter. What matters is level 2s, which are the processes and procedures. You need to integrate that. You need to integrate it, have integrated work instructions, mostly on the shop floor. And the last one is integrated forms and checklists. They have to ask these basic questions, and then after they ask integration, they have to ask a question on standardization. Okay, this plan has integrated management systems. Have we taken as a corporation and flowed out those requirements to the entire corporation? So not only is integration important, every time I talk about integration, I talk about integration and standardization, both being very important.
And Chad, you alluded to this here in your answer to that prior question, this idea of top management. And that's always a question we get a lot whenever we deal with any issues of standards or quality within organizations, is how do you get management buy-in? So when you want to get managers to support you on this initiative to integrate your standards, your management, your standards, what are kind of some of the steps you need to take to get them on board?
To me, it's very simple. It is a huge amount of savings. Top management understands. There's so many things I want to say, but I'll say that, of course, in the hour-long webinar. But let me just be very quick and just say management is going to love the person who brings this to them. Our estimation of a 3 to 4 plant site is that there's about $750,000 savings in net present value when they implement integrated management systems. When they implement it in a corporation, along with new product development integration that you can do and integrated risks, things like FEMA and things like that, there's a $4.4 million savings. So in short, I have many things to say, but in short, I'll just say the savings should drive the implementation.
Well said. And we're going to, as you mentioned, learn a lot more about this, because I know this is a topic that a lot of people out there are interested in as we hear it, and we've seen the response to the webinars we've done.
Sure. Yep.
And the article that Chad wrote for us. So we do have a webinar for you coming up this Tuesday. So mark your calendars for it. It's called Best in Class Integrated Management Systems, Integrating QMS, EMS, OHSAS, IT Security, and Social Responsibility. Again, that's Tuesday, August 14th. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Chad right there is going to be your presenter, and I'm hosting. I'm sitting in for Dirk this week to host. So mark your calendars and check that one out, as you got a little flavor of that from Chad. He's very knowledgeable on this topic. So Chad, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. We're going to see you on Tuesday.
Guys, thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure with you as well. Thanks, Chad.
Great.